Like Martin said, I have recently started university. And when I say recently, I mean very recently. 3 weeks ago today, I arrived. 3 weeks ago today, I was wandering the corridors a little bit lost, knowing absolutely no one. I don't know if you can remember the last time that you were somewhere where you know absolutely no one. It might have been this morning. It's a really bizarre, surreal experience because suddenly you know nothing about anybody. And you're walking along, and I'm walking along these corridors, and I'm having all these kind of conversations like, just tell me who you are, conversations all the time. I've had the same conversation probably hundreds of times in the last 3 weeks, and it's exactly the same every time. It's the kind of like, hi, what's your name? Where are you from? What are you studying? Have you settled in all right? It's like word for word. It's like a script. It's like they send it to you in the freshers pack of the week before, so everyone knows exactly what to say. And so I'm walking along, I'm having these conversations all the time. And I walk away from this conversation, and I still know absolutely nothing about the person I've just met. If I'm lucky, I'll remember their name, but that's unlikely. I still know nothing, and actually, to my shame, I'll probably have a better idea about who that person is by the choice of their wardrobe that particular day. I come away thinking, oh, they had a nice hoodie on, or something stupid like that, and not actually who they are. After the first day even, I got really fed up with this conversation that I was having all the time, and I wanted desperately, the temptation was huge, to just throw in a kind of completely random question, like completely bizarre. I mean, I couldn't even think of anything, but I wanted to like shake it up, do you know what I mean? And just ask something that would kind of tell me something about who they really were, how they thought, how they responded to things, what they loved, what they hated, what they were afraid of, what they wanted to do. I wanted to ask some completely random question, but for the life of me, I couldn't think of anything on the spot. So if you've thought of something, thought of some great question, please tell me at the end, because I'm still having these conversations every day, and I would love a little bit of inspiration. If you could ask a question that would tell you who this person really is, what would you ask? It's like, I want to really know you. What would you ask? Simon Peter was asked a question. It was the most significant question that he had ever been asked. He was sitting there, and Jesus was making him breakfast. And Jesus had this kind of look like he wanted to have a real conversation, like a real serious conversation. And he asks him a question. He says, Simon, do you love me? Simon, do you love me? And this is a hugely significant question. Over the last 3 years, Peter has spent a lot of time with Jesus. He's followed this guy around. He knows who he is. He's been listening to him, trying to figure out. And Jesus has been pulling these things out of Simon that he never knew he had. He calls him Peter, the rock. And he says to him, on you I will build my church, Peter. So suddenly, Peter has this new significance, this new leadership potential that he never knew he had. And over the last 3 years, he's been walking with Jesus, figuring this out, experiencing something of who God is. And things get tricky then, because Jesus starts getting into trouble with the authorities and ends up being arrested. And suddenly, being with Jesus is a dangerous thing to be. And Peter's asked, do you know him? Do you know this Jesus? And he says, no, I don't know. I don't know the guy, all right? I have no idea who he is. 3 times over, complete, absolute, irrefutable denial. So here's Peter, right? The rock of the church. Committed, steadfast, faithful, and can't for the life of him remember who Jesus is. It's not gone very well. And then Jesus is executed. And all this new significance for Peter, all of his new leadership potential is just shattered, and there's nothing. And then there's been this bizarre twist that Peter had no idea was coming, and here's Jesus alive and breathing and cooking him breakfast. And he says, Simon, do you love me? Not a question like, so Simon, do you remember who I am now? Simon, if I gave you another chance, do you think you could do it? He says, Simon, do you love me? And everything rests on the answer to that question. Everything. Peter's leadership rests on his answer to that question. Now, notice, for a leadership test question, this has nothing to do with Peter's practical ability to do the job. Do you have the technical expertise to make this happen? Do you think you could lead an entire world-spread organization. It's not a question like that. It's not a question about Peter's theological understanding. Does he spiritually grasp what's going on right here? This is a question about who Peter really is. This is a question about his character, not what he can do, not what he knows, but who he is. This goes beyond what he looks like, what the things that he can talk about. This is who he is. This is his character that Jesus wants to know about right here. And this is the make or break question. Do you love me? Make or break for leadership. It's down to his character. Now, it's obvious. It's obvious to everyone. It's obvious to Peter. It's obvious to Jesus. It's obvious to us that Peter's character is flawed. He's not perfect. He's just messed up big time. But that's not what Jesus' question is. It's not like, so Peter, now are you perfect? It's, Peter, do you love me? Because that answer to the question will become the foundation of Peter's character. If he can say, yes, Lord, I love you, then his character will begin to change. It'll be fundamentally different. Because you realize that if you love him, you will listen. And if you love him, you will obey. And if you love him, you will sit at your feet and let him change you if you love him. So your character begins to change and grow and develop. If you can say, yes, Lord, I love you. That is the question, make or break. The question of leadership is, do you love me? And you know what? That question hasn't changed. That question hasn't changed. That's exactly the same question today. For anyone who would lead in the kingdom of God, the question is the same. For you, for me, do you love him? Yes or no, make or break. It's not going to be down to what we know or what we can do, but who we are. Do we love him? Are we being changed by Jesus Christ? Do we love him? Now, I'm assuming, because you're here, that your desire is to lead the young people that you lead, that you influence, into a greater understanding of who God is. You want to see them develop and grow in their relationship with God. You want to lead them to the place where they can say, yes, you know what, honestly, I love him. Isn't that what we want? To bring young people to a place where they can say, yes, you know what, I love him, and he's beginning to change who I really am. Well, just as Peter's leadership is born out of his answer to that question, leadership is born out of their answer too. Leadership comes out of this response to Jesus Christ. And actually, everyone will be asked that question. And so everyone, to one degree or another, is invited into leadership. Now, when I talk about leadership, let me explain really quickly. When I mean leadership, I'm kind of talking about leadership as influence. I think it's been mentioned a couple of times today already. Leadership as influence, not necessarily up here with the mic, not necessarily kind of leading the small group or anything, but kind of the influence that happens in the family home, on the school bus, whatever like that. And all of us in Christian faith are called to leadership to some degree or other. It's like evangelism, right? As Christians, we are all called to evangelize. We're called to share the life and love that we know in Jesus Christ. But some of us are called to be evangelists, capital E. It's what we're gifted to do. It's what we're made to do. It happens around us all the time. Some of us are evangelists, but all of us evangelize. The same is true with leadership. We're all called to lead, to influence, but some to be leaders. But this question, do you love me, provokes leadership. And so as you lead your young people into this place where they answer this question, then you've got to expect that leadership is something that will be sparked by that. You've got to expect that leadership, this desire to influence, to make a difference, to make something happen, will be sparked because of their love for Jesus Christ. Expect it. Get excited about it. Don't let it shock you and be like, oh, it's thrown me. Expect it. Foster it. But make sure you're looking for it as a response to their character change. Not to what they know or what they can do, but who they really are. Jesus Christ changes people. Their behavior, yes, but who they really are. And that will be the basis of godly leadership in us and in your young people and in whatever volunteers work with you. So the question is, do you love him? Do you love him?